started out racing, I didn't expect to do very good. You know, I just enjoyed doing it. So at that time, you just bought one motorcycle and you raced it flat track, you raced it in the desert, you just changed tires on it, you know, and different things, and set it up for whatever you want, but you just owned one motorcycle. Now everything is specialized. You wouldn't think of flat tracking a motocrosser, you know. You might use the bike, but you'd change it all around. And much more than we did then. We just took road bikes mainly then, took the lights off of them and raced them, you know. That's about what it was. So it was completely different than it is now. But it's much cheaper, and anybody could do it.
Oh, it was cheaper back then?
Back then it was much cheaper, yeah. It's pretty specialized now. In fact, I've got better equipment now that I can't race, you know, since I'm too old to race. I've got better equipment I've ever had in my life for vintage racing, but now I'm too old to ride it.
So what's the Harley situation? I noticed you never rode any Harleys.
Harleys? Well, they never had anything competitive. You know, they never built anything. Well, I can't say never, but when AMF had Harley, they, you know, the bowling pin setup, AMF bowling, they bought Harley Davidson. I don't remember what year that was, but anyway, for several years they had it. And they imported two-cycle Italian bikes and called them Harley Davidsons. And they had some pretty good bikes in it. You could actually race in the desert or a flat track or whatever. But for the most part, the Harley factory here in the United States never built anything that was competitive in anything but flat tracking.
Was that purposeful, where they placed all their energy, or was it just they didn't have the ability to do it?
Oh, they undoubtedly had the ability. They just didn't want to do it for some reason. And now flat tracking they did really well, especially in professional flat tracking. They just pretty much rule the world in professional flat tracking in the United States for ever since I can remember, and up until just about 6 or 7 years ago when Indian took over, started building Indians again, and they just took over the Harley.
Oh, they took over the Harley.
What the Harleys have been doing for years.
So why do you think they're so popular among like bikers?
Well, it's the image, you know. It's an. I don't understand it really because I don't think the same way those people do. But it's an image thing. It started with Marlon Brando's The Wild One movie, and they're supposed to be big and bad and tough, and you know, it's instead of that, all they do is make noise. But that's what draws them. But they're in trouble right now because the people that are into Harleys are getting old, and they're not buying bikes of my age, you know. And the young people don't pay any attention to them, so Harley is kind of hurting right now.
I like the V-twin. What about BSA? I know you know a little bit about those.
Well, of course, BSA hasn't been in business for years. They still build telescopes and scopes for rifles, and they build rifles. You know, BSA is Birmingham Small Arms. They started out building guns and still build guns.
Kind of went back to what they were doing before then, after the motorcycles.
Yeah, they still build guns and scopes and things like that, but they don't have anything to do with motorcycles anymore. The Japanese just kind of run them out of business is what happened. They had more money than the British, and they're a little smarter, I think. And they kind of changed the whole industry, and the British couldn't compete with them. Now the British are beginning to do a lot better than they were. They have the Triumphs, which is pretty popular, and your brother has one.
Is the Triumph kind of a takeoff of the BSA?
Well, at one time they were the same. I mean, they were owned by the same company, and a lot of they always have been real similar. And BSA was a bigger company than Triumph, but part of the time BSA owned Triumph. And now Triumph is a complete different company. It has nothing to do with the old company. They don't even have the same trademark. They have Triumph as a trademark, but it's different than the old Triumph was. Not very much, but a little bit. They had to change it. Anyway, they're now, just recently, they're starting to build motocross bikes. Triumph, and the new company that started Triumph up again and have been pretty successful in the last few years, are starting to build motocross bikes. Now, I have no idea what they're going to look like or if they're going to be competitive, but they're putting some money into it.
Does they have to go down to a two-cycle? Because I noticed most of them were bigger bikes.
Well, of course, all the serious motocross bikes now are 4-strokes.
Oh.
They're not 2 cycles anymore. 2 cycles kind of went out because of the pollution. They pollute the air a lot worse than 4 cycles. Anyway, they've developed 4 cycles where they make really good horsepower. And now what Triumph's going to do, I have no idea, but it's going to be interesting to see because they're a big company now and they have money behind them and they could get into the business probably easy enough if they wanted to. And they apparently want to, because they have the GOAT working for them, which is Ricky Carmichael, the greatest of all time motocrosser. They call him the GOAT, the greatest of all time, and he was the greatest of all time. Anyway, he retired several years ago, but he's working for Triumph now to develop motocross bikes, and so they evidently are serious, because I'm sure he's not working for nothing. And,